October 3rd, 2016. Paris, France, 2:30 a.m. $10 million. Stolen in 6 minutes. And the craziest part? The robbers didn't break in. They dressed as police officers, and the concierge opened the door for them. Kim Kardashian was lying alone in a luxury Paris hotel during Fashion Week. She was scrolling through her phone in a white bathrobe when two masked men walked into her bedroom and pointed a gun at her face. But this isn't just a story about a celebrity robbery. It's about how social media became the blueprint for the crime. The Grandpa Gang, men in their 60s and 70s, who planned the heist by studying Kim's Instagram posts, a $4 million engagement ring that was never recovered, and the person who built her empire on visibility suddenly going completely silent. 8 men were eventually convicted, but none of them went to prison. The ring was never found. And the case changed how celebrities think about security forever. This is how a group of aging thieves used Instagram to plan the biggest celebrity jewelry heist in French history, and how they almost got away with it. Paris, France, September 2016. The city was preparing for Fashion Week. Every designer, every model, every celebrity in the luxury world would descend on Paris over the coming days. The Champs-Élysées would overflow with photographers. Private jets would fill Le Bourget airport. And inside one particular 8th century mansion on Rue Tronchet, one very special guest was scheduled to arrive. Hôtel de Portelet. It wasn't a traditional hotel. The 19th century mansion had once belonged to French aristocracy. In 2004, a billionaire purchased it and converted it into a private residence hotel with only 11 luxury apartments. Access was strictly restricted. Guests entered through a narrow alley protected by black iron gates. A keypad controlled entry. A single concierge monitored arrivals from a small desk near the entrance. The hotel was known in celebrity circles as the no-address hotel. It didn't appear on booking websites. Reservations were made only through private channels. Previous guests included Madonna and Leonardo DiCaprio. Kanye West had once owned one of the apartments. He and Kim had stayed there during their honeymoon. The privacy was the main selling point. Famous guests could come and go without being photographed. But privacy is not the same thing as security. The building had no armed guards, no metal detectors, no panic buttons in the rooms. The gates looked imposing, but they would open for anyone who looked official enough. Kim's suite cost up to $16,800 per night. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, original artwork on the walls. But no safe room, no real security infrastructure. How do you rob one of the most famous women on earth without breaking into her hotel? You make her invite you in. September 28th, 2016, 5 days before the robbery. A private jet descended through clouds above northern France. Inside sat Kim Kardashian, her personal assistant, and her bodyguard Pascal Duvier. At 10:40 in the morning, the jet landed at Le Bourget airport. Her sisters Courtney and Kendall would arrive separately over the following days. By 2016, Kim Kardashian was one of the most recognized women on the planet. Her Instagram account had over 84 million followers. Her reality show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, was in its 12th season. Her mobile game had generated over $60 million in revenue. She wasn't just a celebrity, she was a brand, and brands needed constant visibility. Kim documented everything, every outfit, every meal, every location. Her followers expected it. The algorithm rewarded it. She posted multiple times every single day. The world watched in real time. That same day, Kim attended a fashion show. As she walked toward the entrance, a man broke through the crowd and rushed directly at her. He grabbed her from behind and attempted to kiss her. Security immediately intervened. The man was pulled away. His name was Vitaly Sedyuk, a Ukrainian television personality known for ambushing celebrities at public events. He had previously targeted Brad Pitt, Will Smith, and Leonardo DiCaprio. To his followers, these were pranks, content for views. To Kim, the encounter was disturbing, but it passed quickly. She didn't recognize what the incident had revealed. Strangers could get close to her. Security had gaps. The constant visibility that had built her career also made her incredibly easy to find. Shortly before the Paris trip, Kanye West had given Kim a new engagement ring, 20 carats, emerald cut, set in platinum, estimated value $4 million. In Paris, Kim photographed it. She held her hand toward the camera so the diamond caught the light perfectly. She posted the image to Instagram. Within hours, the photo had millions of views. Fans commented on the size. Tabloids ran stories about the cost. Luxury blogs analyzed the cut and clarity. Somewhere in Paris, a different audience was watching the same posts. They weren't fans, they weren't journalists. They were professionals, in a very different industry. They saw the ring, they saw which hotel she was staying at. They saw that some nights she posted from her room alone. They began to plan. In the banlieue, the suburban ring that surrounds Paris, a group of men had been meeting regularly. They weren't young, they weren't impulsive. They had all done this type of work before. The leader was Aomar Ait Kadashi, 60 years old. His street name was Old Omar. He had spent decades operating in the criminal underworld. Armed robberies, high-end jewelry thefts, multiple prison sentences. By age 60, he wasn't just a thief anymore. He was a coordinator, a planner, someone younger criminals came to when they needed experience. Working with him was Didier Dubroc, 54 years old. They called him Blue Eyes. He was quiet and efficient. Also involved was Yunus Abbas, 62 years old. He would later write a book about the robbery called I Kidnapped Kim Kardashian. Together with two others, they formed the core team, 5 men who would enter the hotel. Others worked in the background, as drivers, lookouts, and contacts in the jewelry trade. Their research was extremely thorough. They studied Kim's Instagram account obsessively. They identified the exact hotel from background details visible in her posts. They noted her daily schedule. They observed that her bodyguard wasn't always present with her. They learned the hotel had minimal security, just one concierge at night. They timed police patrol routes in the neighborhood. They acquired authentic-looking police uniforms. They obtained fake badges that looked convincing. They selected bicycles for the escape route. Bicycles were quiet. They didn't trigger traffic cameras the way cars did. They could disappear into the maze of Paris streets. The plan was set. They just had to wait for the right night when she would be alone. Think about that for a second. A crew of senior citizens planning the heist of the century using nothing but Instagram. Would you have spotted the danger? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe, because the next 6 minutes will change how you see social media forever. Now, the night arrives. October 2nd, 2016, the day before the robbery. Kim spent the day at various fashion shows around Paris. In the evening, she attended a private dinner at the showroom of Azzedine Alaïa, a legendary Tunisian French designer. Kim was accompanied by her sisters Courtney and Kendall. The dinner ended around 9:45 in the evening. Courtney and Kendall wanted to continue the night. They decided to go to L'Arc, a popular nightclub near the Champs-Élysées. Kim was tired. She wanted to go back to the hotel and get some sleep. Pascal Duvier, her bodyguard, offered to accompany her. She declined. The hotel was secure, she said. She would be perfectly fine. She told him to stay with her sisters, make sure they were safe. Pascal agreed. He left with Courtney and Kendall for the nightclub. Kim returned to Hotel de Portelès alone. She arrived at approximately 1 o'clock in the morning on October 3rd. She entered her suite, removed her makeup, took a shower, changed into a white bathrobe, got into bed. Her friend and stylist Simone Harouche was staying in a room on the lower floor of the same duplex suite. She was already asleep. Kim picked up her phone and started scrolling through social media. Outside, the streets of Paris were quiet. It was the middle of the night. 90 minutes later, everything changed. 2:18 a.m. street cameras in the 8th arrondissement recorded 3 men cycling toward Rue Tronchet. They wore dark jackets with reflective strips, police uniforms. Behind them, 2 more men approached on foot. 2:30 a.m. The 5 men reached the entrance to Hotel de Portelès. The iron gates were closed. The main door was locked for the night. One of the men pressed the intercom button. Inside the building, the night concierge checked the security camera monitor. He saw police uniforms. He saw official-looking badges. Without hesitation, he pressed the button to unlock the door. The moment the door opened, everything changed. The concierge was grabbed immediately. A gun was pressed hard against his body. One of the men spoke to him in French. His voice was calm but menacing. "Where is the rapper's wife?" The concierge understood exactly which guest they meant. Everyone knew Kim Kardashian was staying there. He had no choice. He led them toward the staircase. His wrists were quickly bound behind his back with plastic zip ties. Tape was placed over his mouth. He was forced to walk ahead of the group, showing them the exact way to her suite. 3 of the men stayed downstairs. They guarded the door. They watched the empty street outside. They waited and listened for any problems. 2 men climbed the stairs with the bound concierge. They reached the door to apartment number 1 on the upper floor. The concierge unlocked it with his key. The door opened. Kim Kardashian looked up from her phone. She saw 2 men in ski masks standing in her bedroom doorway. Behind them, she could see the concierge bound and gagged. Her first confused thought was that this might be a prank. Maybe that man Vitaly again. Maybe someone trying to get content for social media. Then she saw the gun clearly in one man's hand. Reality hit her hard. She reached desperately for her phone to call Pascal. The call didn't connect. One of the masked men grabbed the phone from her hand and threw it across the marble floor. The men began shouting commands in French. "À terre," get on the ground. Kim didn't speak French, but she understood the tone and gestures perfectly. She slid off the bed and onto the cold marble floor. The man standing directly over her was Omar Ait Kadachi, old Omar, 60 years old. He pulled her hands roughly behind her back. Zip ties tightened around her wrists. Uncomfortable but not painful, yet. The other man, Didier Dubruc, took a roll of duct tape from a bag. He wrapped it around her ankles multiple times. She couldn't move her legs at all now. Her white robe had shifted during the struggle. She felt completely exposed and vulnerable on the floor of her own room. Omar grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the bathroom. Kim would later testify that she felt absolutely terrified in that moment. She thought about her children. She thought she was going to die. Omar wrapped more tape around her legs for additional restraint. Then he dragged her toward the bathroom where the concierge was already lying on the tile floor. Kim was placed beside him. Didier stood over both of them, holding the gun steadily. Omar knelt beside Kim and spoke quietly. One word: the ring. Kim shook her head. She didn't understand the French word he had used. Omar pointed directly at her hand. The 20-carat diamond caught the light from the bathroom fixture overhead. He pulled the ring from her finger. While Omar secured the ring, Didier moved methodically through the suite. He clearly knew exactly what he was looking for. He opened drawers, checked jewelry boxes, collected necklaces, earrings, bracelets, and expensive watches. Everything went into a large duffel bag. The men were completely calm and methodical. They didn't rush at all. They had clearly done this type of work many times before. On the lower floor of the duplex suite, Simone Harouche woke up suddenly. She heard shouting. She recognized Kim's voice. Something was very wrong. Simone didn't go upstairs to investigate. She ran to the bathroom on her floor and locked the door behind her. From inside, she grabbed her phone and immediately called Pascal Duvier. Pascal was at Lark nightclub with Courtney and Kendall. He answered his phone. He heard Simone's panicked voice whispering urgently. Something terrible was happening at the hotel right now. Pascal didn't waste time asking questions. He ran for the exit and sprinted through the streets of Paris toward the hotel. The distance was less than 2 kilometers. He covered it as fast as he possibly could, but it wouldn't be fast enough. Inside the hotel, one of the men guarding the entrance received a signal. The message was immediately relayed upstairs to the others. Omar and Didier grabbed the duffel bag. They had what they came for. Before leaving, they pushed Kim further into the bathroom and closed the door behind her. They didn't lock it, but Kim didn't know that. She lay on the floor, bound and gagged, completely unable to move. The 5 men exited the building through the same door they had entered. Bicycles were waiting exactly where they had left them. They mounted the bikes and pedaled away into the darkness. During the escape, something fell from one of the bags. A platinum cross necklace encrusted with diamonds. It landed on the cobblestones with a small sound. The men didn't stop to retrieve it. They kept riding. The necklace was worth approximately $31,000. It would be found the next morning by a passerby. Total elapsed time inside the hotel, 6 minutes. By the time Pascal Duvier reached the hotel, the men were completely gone. The bicycles had disappeared into the maze of Paris streets. There was no car to chase, no license plate to trace. Just silence and darkness. Simone found Kim still in the bathroom. She freed her from the restraints. Kim was shaking uncontrollably. She was crying. She couldn't stop repeating the same words over and over. I thought they were going to kill me. I thought I was going to die. Police arrived within minutes, but Kim hesitated to approach them at first. The robbers had been wearing police uniforms. How could she be certain these were actually real officers? She stayed back and watched them carefully before finally accepting they were legitimate. Across the Atlantic Ocean, Kanye West was performing live at a concert in New York. Someone approached the stage and whispered urgently in his ear. He stopped the concert mid-song. He told the confused audience there was a family emergency. He walked off stage immediately. Within hours, he was on a plane to Paris. By sunrise, the story had reached every major news outlet on Earth. Kim Kardashian robbed at gunpoint in Paris, $10 million in jewelry stolen. The heist was complete. In the days following the robbery, Paris police had almost nothing to work with. The men had worn gloves throughout. There were no fingerprints anywhere. The phones they used were prepaid burners purchased with cash and discarded immediately after use. The bicycles were stolen from different locations across the city days before the robbery. But investigators had one crucial piece of evidence: the zip ties. When the plastic restraints were fastened around Kim's wrists and the concierge's hands, whoever handled them had left behind microscopic traces of DNA, skin cells, sweat, material too small to see but large enough to analyze. The DNA was extracted and run through the French criminal database. No match. The samples didn't correspond to anyone currently in the system. The investigation stalled completely. Investigators considered every possible angle. Was the concierge involved? He had opened the door without any resistance. Police questioned him extensively. They examined his finances, his contacts, his entire background. They found absolutely no connection to any criminal networks. He was released. Kim's driver that night had been among the last people to see her before the robbery. Could he have passed information to the robbers? He was brought in for intensive questioning. One of 17 suspects detained, eventually released. The theory that survived was this: it was an outside crew of professionals. They gathered all their intelligence from public sources, Instagram posts, celebrity news coverage, hotel reviews. They exploited the massive gap between Kim's public visibility and her actual physical protection. Investigators believe the stolen jewelry was moved extremely quickly after the robbery. The most likely destination was Antwerp, Belgium, the diamond capital of the world, where more than 80% of the world's rough diamonds pass through the city. Stones can be recut to change their appearance completely. Settings can be melted down. Gold can be reformed into entirely new pieces. A distinctive ring can become completely unrecognizable within days. Kim's $4 million engagement ring had been one of the largest and most distinctive pieces of jewelry in the world when it was taken. By the time investigators began seriously looking for it, it may have already ceased to exist in its original form. To this day, the ring has never been recovered. January 2017, 3 months after the robbery, the DNA sample from the zip ties finally produced a match. French authorities had expanded their search to include samples from past investigations going back years. One of the profiles matched a man who had been arrested years earlier on completely unrelated charges. Omar Ait Kadach, Old Omar, 60 years old, a known figure in the Parisian criminal underworld. Police didn't arrest him immediately. They began careful surveillance. They tapped his phones. They monitored his movements. They tracked everyone he contacted. The wiretapped conversations gradually revealed the entire network. Names emerged: Didier Dubroc, Eunice Abbas, others who had helped plan the operation, driven support vehicles, or connected the crew with buyers for the stolen jewelry. Police finally had enough evidence. Early morning, January 2017, Coordinated raids struck locations across Paris and its suburbs simultaneously. 17 people were arrested in total. Younis Abbas was pulled from his bed while still asleep. Omar Ait Kadash was taken at another location. Didier Dubroc was found and detained. All 5 men who had entered the hotel that night were now in custody. The suspects ranged in age from their 40s to their 70s. The French media immediately gave them a nickname: Les Papis Braqueurs, the Grandpa Gang. Kim Kardashian was informed immediately. The men who had invaded her room, who had bound her wrists, who had pointed a gun at her face, were finally in handcuffs. The trial took years to reach its conclusion. Legal delays, bureaucratic processes, prioritization of other major cases. Finally, in April 2025, the trial began. In May 2025, final sentencing was delivered. 10 defendants faced various charges related to the robbery. The evidence against them was overwhelming. DNA from the zip ties, surveillance footage from street cameras, wiretapped phone conversations. Several defendants confessed to their roles. Omar Ait Kadash, now deaf and in rapidly declining health, wrote a letter of apology to Kim Kardashian. He expressed regret for what he had done. He said he never intended to traumatize her the way he did. 8 of the 10 defendants were found guilty. Omar received 8 years in prison, with 5 years suspended. The others received sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years, most partially suspended. Under French law, some of these sentences could be served under supervised release rather than actual incarceration, particularly for older defendants in poor health. Due to time already served and their ages, none of them would return to prison. Kim didn't attend the trial in person for the verdict. She provided her testimony through a written statement and in-person testimony earlier in May. In her statement, she described the lasting impact of the robbery, the fear, the nightmares, the feeling that she would never truly be safe again. The jewelry was never recovered. The $4 million ring was never found. The sentences were handed down. The trial ended. In the hours immediately after the robbery, Kim Kardashian flew back to New York. She covered her face with a black blanket as she walked to the waiting car. Cameras followed her, as they always had. But something fundamental had changed. For the first time in her entire career, she went completely silent. No Instagram posts, no Twitter updates, no public appearances of any kind. The woman who had built an empire on constant visibility simply disappeared from public view. When she eventually returned to public life months later, the changes were clearly visible. She stopped displaying expensive jewelry online. She traveled with significantly more security. She spoke publicly about anxiety, about persistent fear, about the ongoing difficulty of feeling safe in her own home. The robbery became a dividing line in her life, before and after. The person she had been in that hotel room, scrolling her phone and unaware of what was coming, no longer existed. The Paris heist changed how celebrities think about social media forever. Security experts now warn their clients never to post real-time location information, never to display expensive jewelry online, never to reveal schedules or hotel details that could be exploited. The Kardashians themselves changed their posting habits dramatically. Photos are now posted with significant time delays. Locations are obscured. Security teams review every post before publication. Celebrity protection industries grew rapidly in the years after the robbery. Bodyguard agencies reported massive increases in client demand. Residential security systems became standard for A-list celebrities. The men who robbed her were caught. They were tried. Some were convicted. But punishment isn't the same thing as repair. The $4 million ring was never recovered. The fear she experienced in that bathroom is permanent. No court sentence can undo that trauma. Omar Ait Kadash apologized. He said he regretted what he did. Perhaps he genuinely meant it. Perhaps he was simply old and sick and hoping for leniency from the court. It doesn't really matter. An apology doesn't erase trauma. Remember the ring she posted to Instagram? The $4 million diamond that caught the light so perfectly in her photograph. That post wasn't just a celebration, it was a blueprint. 6 minutes of terror, $10 million gone, one ring lost forever. This is the story of what happens when visibility becomes vulnerability, when followers become predators, when the platform that built an empire becomes the weapon that destroys safety forever. The jewelry can be replaced, the money can be earned again, the ring can theoretically be remade. But the feeling of safety? That's gone forever. And that brings us to the end of our story. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell button so you can receive new videos.